Hello, my name is James Buck. I'm the Director of Flight Operations for Aspen Avionics. My goal in this course is to teach you how to identify and use the basic functions of the Evolution ProMax system. My hope is that you take away a basic understanding of the fundamental use cases for each feature in this system. This course is in no way a replacement for a thorough understanding of the pilot guide. Thank you for being an Aspen Avionics customer. Let's get started. I'm going to go over the basic features and functions of the Aspen Avionics Evolution ProMax primary flight display. First, you can see the entire six-pack is displayed on the Aspen primary flight display. You have an altitude tape, you have your vertical speed indicator tape and a numerical value. You've got your attitude indicator, your HSI, your airspeed tape, and you also have your turn coordinator here above the HSI compass, and you have your ball represented by this rectangle below the triangle. Next, we'll go over the menu button. The pilot selectable menu has several features you can set. You can use this in both flight and on the ground. Primarily, I just use it on the ground and set it once and forget it. You press the button, you'll have a selection of roughly 15 pages depending on your display. Okay, the first page of the menu, you have the first item selectable as tapes. You can enable or disable tapes depending on your comfort level with glass. I recommend if this is your first introduction to glass that you press this button. Notice it's magenta. The edit value is magenta as well on the right knob. Turn it one click, it goes to tape disable, and notice your altitude and your airspeed tapes are removed. This is really handy if you're new to glass to learn your basic scan, and then once you're comfortable, bring the tapes back into your field of view. The next hotkey is for radar altimeter. If your aircraft is equipped with a radar altimeter, you can disable or enable it from there. The next hotkey is autocourse enable or disable. I highly recommend you keep autocourse in enable. What that does when you're flying a GPS flight plan, every time you hit a fix, the Aspen will automatically auto-course to the next fix. Otherwise, you have to twist in the new course every time you hit a fix. The next hotkey is for ARC mode, HSI, or CDI. You can select whatever preference if you prefer the HSI or the CDI on your ARC mode with this menu selection. The last button on this page is AHRS reset. If you're ever flying along VFR and you believe the attitude presentation is not representative of what you see outside, you can do an AHRS reset in flight. For page 2, your next selection is bar out. You can either select inches, which we use in the US, or millibars. Simply do that by pressing the hotkey. Notice it's magenta, you edit the value, and it'll change to inches or millibars. In the US, we always keep it in inches. The hotkey after that is outside air temperature. You can select in Celsius, which displays right here, or Fahrenheit. So whatever one you're more comfortable using, you can select it right there. If you have storm scoped equipped, you can clear the strikes with this hotkey. You can also do a strike test with this hotkey. The last hotkey on this page is auto range disable or enable. I prefer to keep it in disable. What auto range does is every time you hit a fix, if that fix is 20 miles away, it'll automatically range out the scale of your HSI to 20 miles. If your next fix is 10 miles, then it automatically ranges into 10 miles. I like to keep it in disable and to keep it around 5 miles, but that's just my personal preference. The first selection on page 3 is your angle of attack display. You can have it in auto, completely off, or on all the time. Personally, I like to keep it in auto. What auto does is during the takeoff and landing phase when the aircraft is slow, it'll automatically show up. Once I'm at cruise altitude and cruise speeds where angle of attack is no longer a factor for me, but the angle of attack display goes away. The next display is Mach display. If you're flying a very fast aircraft, you can turn that on or off there. And there's also overspeed warning test, which is a hotkey below there that you can also use if you're flying a much faster airplane. The last button on this page is the select altitude arc. You can turn that on or off. I recommend you keep this on. What this does is when you have an altitude set in your altitude bug, whether it's in a climb or descent, you'll see an arc represented on your HSI of where along your route of flight you're going to intercept that altitude. The next page of the menu has your database. So if you have synthetic vision, you have a database in here, it'll tell you when it expires. There's no selection on that hotkey. The next hotkey is for your terrain warning system, which is included in synthetic vision. You can have it on, you can inhibit, or have it in synthetic vision only. The reason you would use inhibit is if you're a backcountry pilot flying to a strip that's not on a chart, If you inhibit it, this will prevent the terrain warning system from going off as a nuisance alarm. Synthetic vision airport flags, when you're in synthetic vision, you can have airport flags displayed on the display. You can have it at your flight planned airport only. You can do it on certain runway lengths. So you can have it, anything greater than 4,500, anything greater than 4,000, 3,500, 3,000, or 2,500, or all hard surfaces. The reason for these selections is if you have an aircraft that needs 4,000 feet of runway, then you probably just want it selected on there so you're not getting any false alarms to go to a runway in case you have an emergency that's much shorter than what you need. Flight path marker, enable or disable, this is a synthetic vision function as well, which we'll see a little bit later. This is the what's called a gun sight that kind of floats around and tells you where the aircraft is going at that particular time. I find it very useful. Some pilots find it distracting, so if you have synthetic vision, you can enable or disable that sight here. The last hotkey tells you the terrain database expiration date. Okay, the next page is a 360 map setting. The first selection is the declutter level of the 360 view. You have four levels of declutter, which remove things like VORs, airports, intersections from the HSI portion of the view. The next hotkey is the 360 flight plan, which you can have auto or off. I just recommend you keeping that in auto. The next hotkey is 360 airports, which you can have once again auto or off. Notice that airports go away. I recommend once again keeping that in auto. The next hotkey on the 360 view is VORs, and once again they can automatically pop up or you can turn them off, noticing that the VOR at Albuquerque is going away. The last hotkey of the 360 map setting is intersections and NDBs. Once again, you can turn those auto or off. And if there's any intersections or NDBs displayed, when off mode they'll disappear, and auto they'll show up. The next page is the ARC map settings. If you notice, they have the same selections as the 360 map settings we just talked about a second ago. The next page are V-speeds. V-speeds are set by your technician during the installation and are not selectable by the pilot. But you can see the V-speeds, what they're set at, so if there's any inaccuracies, contact your technician and make sure he sets them appropriately for your aircraft. You can turn V-speeds on or off with this hotkey. Notice the V-speeds here listed by your the airspeed tape. If I go to disable, they're removed or enabled. I recommend leaving them enabled so you know what your V-speeds are at a quick glance at any time. Page 8 are more V-speeds, VX, VY, VLO, and VLE. Page 9 is the STEC 55X autopilot page. If you have the STEC 55X enhanced integration, you'll have multiple features here that you'll be able to select as well. Page 10 is your XM receiver. If you have an XM receiver installed, the serial number of that unit will be right here. The signal quality will be here, and the status of your XM receiver will be right here. Continuing on with the XM receiver on page 11, you'll have the age of the various information you're getting from the XM receiver. The third page of the XM receiver has the Canadian radar coverage, and then also if you have XM receiver, you can hold for a weather legend here. Page 13 is a UAT page. If the Aspen display is integrated with your UAT receiver, you can see the status of your UAT. You can also see the current code, and you can also push to ident. The next hotkey is the horizontal vector scale of your traffic targets. You can set those to 60 seconds, 50 seconds, 40, 30, 20, 10, or 0. I recommend keeping it in 60 because that'll show you where that target's going to be in 60 seconds. The last hotkey on this page is your weather legend for ADS-B. Press and hold, and you can see the color code for the rain from heavy to light. And if you see a grayed out box, it's no radar coverage. Page 14 of 15 are your power settings. Here you can check the battery percentage by pressing the battery. Note that you'll get a red box that says your battery level will be available in a countdown from 15 seconds. This annunciation shows that I'm on the PFD's battery and I have 99% remaining in the battery life. Once I've verified the battery life, I go back to external power by pressing that button. The next hotkey is the restart hotkey. If for some reason you see the display doing something unusual, you can press this and restart the system. In over 1,000 hours of flying Aspen displays, I've never had to use the restart function in a normal flight. The next hotkey is the external power coming into the display system. The last hotkey is the battery status, whether it's charging or failed. The last page, system status, is probably the most important to the user. This will tell you your map software level, your IOP software level, and your display serial number. Why this is important is if you ever have to troubleshoot with a technician, you can tell them right away what your software levels are and what the display serial numbers are. This will help your technician troubleshoot. Once you're done editing all your menu functions, simply press the menu button and go back into the normal view. Next, we'll go over the primary flight display's hotkeys. The first hotkey allows you to select through the different pages, so you have 1 of 3, 2 of 3, or 3 of 3. The first hotkey in page 1 of 3 is minimums. By pressing this hotkey, you get the minimums box in magenta, and you'll also have minimums above the right knob. And you can select the minimums for the instrument approach by twisting the right knob. This will give you both a visual representation as you're coming down to minimums, as well as an audio alert. About 100 foot per hour, you'll hear approaching minimums, and then when you're at minimums, you'll hear minimums over your headset. The next hotkey is for 360 or arc mode. The vast majority of pilots like to fly with HSI in 360 mode. Some people prefer the arc mode. You can switch back and forth. I generally fly in 360. When I'm hand flying an ILS approach, I like to use the arc mode so I can fine-tune my adjustments. If you have an older non-digital autopilot that does not have GPS steering, this hotkey would be GPSS. So you would have your flight plan activated in your GPS navigator, you'd have your autopilot in heading mode, and you would select GPS steering here, and that way at each GPS fix, it would auto-turn to the next fix. The last button on every page is your altimeter setting. By pressing the bar out button, your bar out setting turns magenta, and your bar out is magenta. This means you can set it. This is how you set it to the current altimeter setting of your location. Approximately 5 seconds later, it times out and goes back to its normal size. Page 2 of 3 are your hazards. If you had Storm Scope installed on your airplane, this is where you'd be able to select cells, strikes, or clear your strikes. The next hotkey is NEXRAD. So whether you have ADS-B or XM, this is where you'd be able to select the NEXRAD picture. Remember that the NEXRAD picture of ADS-B and XM can be up to 30 minutes delayed. So never use the NEXRAD picture for tactical penetration of storms. This is more strategic, well in advance of the storm, to decide to maneuver around it, never to penetrate through. The next hotkey is your traffic selection. You can select traffic normal, you can select traffic unrestricted, traffic above, traffic below, or traffic off. I usually keep it in traffic normal. That just gives me a good puck of roughly 3,000 feet above or below my aircraft. The last button, like I stated earlier, on every page is the altimeter setting. So you can press that and reset your altimeter setting. The next page, if you have synthetic vision, is the synthetic vision page. Note we have what we call the non-synthetic vision view. We have SV2, which is my favorite. We have synthetic vision underlaid the attitude indicator, and we have the normal blacked out HSI. Or we have SV3, which we have synthetic vision underlaid the attitude indicator, and then we have a terrain map underlaid the HSI. The next hotkey is field of view. Currently it's in field of view 2, which is a widescreen representation of what's outside in front of the cockpit. If you go to field of view 1, this is a much narrower representation of what you see outside the cockpit. Note that when you go from field of view 2 to field of view 1, the pitch scale changes as well. The next hotkey selection is the distance marker. Note currently you have this dashed cyan line, that's your distance marker. You can press the hotkey and you can select it out to different values of distance. I use this on mountain ranges. If I'm at low visibility, I can dial this up to the mountain range and see how far away it is from me. So currently right now it's 17 miles away. The last hotkey once again is your altimeter setting. Press that and you can set your altimeter setting. The right knob controls your heading bug, your altitude bug, your minimums features, and your altimeter settings. If you just start twisting the right knob, you'll automatically start moving your heading bug. Notice the heading box is in magenta. Heading is in magenta above the right knob. As I'm twisting the function around, I'm setting my heading bug to whatever I'm assigned or whatever I want to fly. I can also press and hold and sync up to my current heading. If I give a quick press of the right knob, it goes into my altitude bug. Notice the altitude box is in magenta, and now above the right knob it says altitude, and I can twist this left or right, and set the altitude I want to climb or descend to. As I showed previously, when you press the minimums button, you use the right knob to adjust your minimums for the instrument approach you're flying. The center button sets the HSI to the desired navigation source. I can select VLOC, GPS 1, GPS 2, or VLOC 2, whatever I have in my navigator. The next button sets my single bearing pointer. So just like my double needle, I also have a single needle bearing pointer that I can select to GPS 1, GPS 2, VOR 1, or VOR 2 just by pressing and cycling through the button. I can also turn them completely off. The left knob, I can set either my desired course or indicated airspeed bug. When I'm in VLOC, I can set the twist the course left or right and set the desired course on my HSI. Note that when I'm in GPS, it's an auto course because I have auto course selected in the menu. A quick press of the left knob gets me to my indicated airspeed bug. Here I can select my airspeed bug to whatever I desire to fly at that current time. For instance, I might set it at 110 knots for my climb out, and I've got my bug there. Or once I'm at cruising altitude, I might want a quick reference for my best glide speed, so I'll set it down to whatever the best glide speed is for my aircraft. That's a good target for an emergency. At the bottom of the display is your micro SD card slot. On the SD card is where you keep your current databases for synthetic vision. Also, when we have periodic software updates, your technicians will pull out this card, put the software update on there, and update your system. In between the attitude indicator and the HSI is the data bar. The data bar displays true airspeed and ground speed, outside air temperature, current winds, and your current altimeter setting. You have the option of unlocking angle of attack on the primary flight display. It'll show up here right next to the airspeed tape. You also have the option to unlock angle of attack on the primary flight display. When unlocked on the primary flight display, it is displayed just next to the airspeed tape. You've got a blue field of view, green, yellow, and the yellow-black hash marks, and the flaps up and flaps down indicator. When you're flying either an ILS or LPV type approach, you'll have your lateral deviation scale right here where it's depicted, and you'll also have a similar scale depicted here for your vertical deviations. If your autopilot is equipped with flight director capabilities, your flight director will also display on the attitude indicator. The Aspen PFD Pro Maxes also have what's called degraded mode. While in degraded mode, if you had a pitot-static blockage and you lose your indicated airspeed, the system will switch automatically to degraded mode without any pilot interaction. The system will use GPS ground speed to maintain an AHARS solution. You will get an annunciation right across the top of the attitude indicator that lets you know you're in degraded mode. While in degraded mode, you want to maintain normal IFR type maneuvers, and you will not notice a difference in performance of the attitude indicator. Now we'll go over the Aspen Avionics Evolution Pro Max multifunction displays. There are two types of multifunction displays, the MFD 500 and the MFD 1000. The main difference between the two is that the MFD 1000 has its own built-in AHARS. So if you ever have a problem with the PFD, you simply press the rev button and it becomes your backup PFD. The range buttons allow you to zoom out or zoom in on the various displays of the multifunction display. The pilot selectable menu button has 10 pages of menu selections. The first page of the menu section is general settings. Here you can select between GPS 1 or GPS 2. You also have the orientation indicator, which is right up here. You can turn that on or off. The next hotkey is the nav map orientation. So depending whether you'd like to fly in heading up, track up, or north up, you can select that here. The next hotkey is the nav map auto range, enable or disable. With this enabled, the nav map will automatically range out to the distance of the next GPS fix. When you have it disabled, it'll stay on the range you have set on the nav map. The last hotkey is AHARS reset and functions just the same way as the PFD's AHARS reset does. The next page is the chart and synthetic vision settings. The first hotkey is the airport diagram quick access function. You can have it in auto, manual, or off. I recommend keeping it in auto, so every time you land at an unfamiliar airport, as you slow down below 30 knots, the airport diagram will automatically pop up on the display. The next hotkey is a terrain warning system. You can have it selected to on, inhibit, synthetic vision only, or back to on. The next hotkey is a synthetic vision airport flag display. And just like on the PFD, you can set it for different runway lengths, your flight planned airport only, all hard surface runways, or all on. The next hotkey is a flight path marker. You can enable or disable, and we'll show that more on when we're on the synthetic vision page. And the last selection is a synthetic vision aircraft reference symbol, and you can have that on or off, and once again we'll show that when we're on the synthetic vision page. The next page is nav map settings. The first hotkey is a nav map controlled airspace function. You can have it on auto, where you see the Class C airspace around Albuquerque, or you can turn it off. Personally, I like to have it on so I know when I'm ever near controlled airspace. The next hotkey is nav map special use airspace. Notice we have a special use airspace up here in the corner. I can have that selected auto, or once again off. Once again, I recommend you keep it in auto. That'll prevent you from inadvertently flying into special use airspace. The next hotkey is nav map flight plans and waypoints. And you can deselect those as well. The next hotkey is nav map intersections. Notice right here we have Dudley, Hexham, AWASH when there's on, or when it's in auto, or we can deselect them. So if you're not flying IFR, you might just want to have these deselected, but if you're flying IFR, you want to have those in auto so you know where those are at. The last hotkey is the nav map VORs. Notice we have the Albuquerque VOR with the compass rose around it now. You can turn off the compass rose, but the VOR is still there, or you can completely remove the VORs. The next page of the menu is more nav map settings. You can do the same thing with NDABs, have them auto or off. Next is airport with hard surface runways. The next selection is other airports in the area. You can turn them on or off. The next hotkey is nav map transportation. What that means is highways and roadways in the area. So notice we have an interstate here when it's auto, or I can remove them. The last hotkey are the nav map boundaries. These are typically state lines. So we have the state line here, and that's an auto, or we can remove that line. The first hotkey allows you to select the nav map pan feature timeout. You can have it where it's off, and you can select from 30 seconds all the way up to 5 minutes. I typically just leave it at about 30 seconds. The next hotkey is the selected altitude arc intercept. You can have this on or off. When this is enabled, just like on the PFD, the altitude that you have bugged on the PFD will display an arc along your route of flight to show you where you're going to intercept that altitude. The next three hotkeys are non-selectable, but all they do is tell you the date of your Jeppesen database, your charts database, and the terrain database. The next page of the menu is your XM receiver. Just like on a PFD, you'll have the XM serial number, the signal quality of the XM receiver, and the status of the XM receiver. The next page of the menu is a UAT page. Here, just like on a PFD, you can select the length of the pointer that comes off the traffic target. The next page of the menu are the timers page. Here you can name the timers between leg timer, fuel timer, or just generic timer. It's the same for each one. The next menu page are power settings. And just like on the PFD, once again, you can check your battery percentage by pressing the battery. And note you'll get the battery level in 15 seconds and it'll count down. This is showing that you have 99% of the battery life remaining. Go back to external power. Once again, if you see some type of anomaly on the display that you can't explain, you might want to try the restart function. Once again, in the entire time I've been flying Aspen displays, I've never had to use the restart function in flight. The next hotkey is the external power, and that's just showing you how much power is coming into the unit from the aircraft. And the last hotkey is the battery function, showing it's charging or whether it's failed or some other type of issue that you need to troubleshoot. And just like on the PFD, the last page has important information about the display the pilot should know. First one is the map software version, the IOP software version, the display serial number, and if you have another device like our CG100, this will tell you what the software version of that is as well. To get yourself out of the menu, just press the menu button. Just like on the PFD, the multifunction display also has an SD card slot. This is where the pilot can update their databases, and just like before, your technicians can use this slot to update your software. The multifunction display has 3 distinct views. The first one we're looking at is the full screen. We can change what we're looking at in the full screen by turning the right knob. We have terrain, traffic, charts, and other views. The next view is the split screen mode. By turning the left knob 2 clicks, we're now in split screen. Notice now we have 2 boxes and we can change those views by turning the right knob. If we press the right knob, now the magenta boxes are on the bottom box and we change those views. The next view is the thumbnail view. So you have 2 smaller boxes up on the top and a larger display on the bottom. Once again, you can change whatever's in each window by turning the right knob, pressing the right knob to change to a different window, so you can set it up however you like for flight. The nav map has 3 different selections of hotkey functions. The first one is VFR or IFR, which I also like to use for day or night. So if I'm flying during the day, I'll typically have the VFR up. If I'm flying at night, it gives me less glare, but you can also use this for VFR or IFR flight. The next hotkey is 360 or arc view. In the 360 view, the aircraft reference symbol is in the center of the display. You can also select arc view. Now the aircraft reference symbol is at the bottom of the display. The next hotkey is the map hotkey. The pilots can use the map hotkey to declutter the nav map. Notice on the first press, the VORs go away. Second press, the special use airspace goes away. Next press, the ATC controlled airspace goes away. And the next press, all the airports go away. You can never declutter towers or obstacles. The last hotkey enables low or high altitude airways. By pressing it once, the low altitude airways will load up. It does take a few seconds to go through the database to bring up your current location. Here you can see all the Victor airways. Pressing it again brings all your high altitude airways, and you can turn them off. The next set of hotkeys are your hazard functions. The first hotkey, you can turn the terrain on or off, and you can see the terrain that's below you. The terrain hotkey enables the terrain where you can see the color-coded terrain that's above or below your position. Or you can turn NextRed on and have the NextRed picture from ADS-B or XM weather. Note that the colors between terrain and NextRed are similar, so when you try to turn one on, the other one automatically gets turned off. The next hotkey is your traffic hotkey, and just like on the PFD, you can have it normal, unrestricted, above, below, or you can turn it completely off. Once again, I just like to have it in normal, so I have the traffic that's roughly 3,000 feet above or below me at any time. The last set of hotkeys allows you to enable the aircraft ID or METARs. When an aircraft is equipped with ADS-B out, you'll get that aircraft's N number. The METAR hotkey, when enabled, if you're receiving ADS-B or XM METAR data, you'll get the color-coded flags for the airports. The nav map also has several other features displayed on the nav map at all times. The first thing we have is the data bar. The data bar tells you what GPS is selected, in this case it's GPS 1, what the current track is. If you had a GPS waypoint, you'd have your ETE, estimated time en route to the next waypoint, and the current altimeter setting. You're also told up here whether you're in heading up, north up, or track up mode, which you can select in the menu. Down below in this corner, you have above ground level. When you're flying along and you have an emergency, having the above ground level is really handy right there in the nav map, because now you know, based on your aircraft, how far you can glide, if you can make an airport or you have to put down somewhere off field. You also have the range that you're currently on, the nav map is on, which is 15 nautical miles here, and you select that with the range button. You'll also have enunciations for TFR, traffic, or weather. Just because you have traffic or weather selected on the nav map and these enunciations are in green, you want to verify these enunciations over here are in green as well, because when they're green, that's telling you the receiver and the Aspen display are integrated properly. If they're yellow, either there's some type of delay in the traffic or weather information, or there's a problem with your receiver. The multifunction displays also have a pan feature that allows you to select information on the Aspen display. To activate the pan function, you press the left knob once, and now you've got the cursor in the center, so you can use the left knob to go left and right, and the right knob to go up and down. So say you want to get information on the Santa Fe airport. So Santa Fe is down here, so I use the left knob to go left to right, the right knob, I scroll down to the Santa Fe airport. I'm on the Santa Fe VOR right now. Now I'm on the Santa Fe airport. I can press the info button, and now I can pull out information about the airport. First, you can see it's going to tell you the distance and time to the airport, and it also should tell you, if it's receiving ADS-B, what type of weather there is at the airport and what type of approach is available as well. If I push for details, now I can look at the actual distance and time. I can also look at the lat long of the airport. I press the COM button, it'll load up the communications, and now I can select the ATIS frequencies, tower frequencies, the ground frequencies, whatever frequencies are available. Press the runway button. That tells me all the runways available and their lengths and widths. Press the weather button. It'll tell me the current ADS-B or XM supplied METAR information. The last hotkey allows you to select a chart, so if you have to shoot an instrument approach, you can readily get to those right here from this button. Another useful function of the pan feature is to select special use airspace. So once again, I press the left knob, use the right knob to scroll down, and now I've got highlighted around a special use airspace. So I press the info, push for details. It tells me this is a restricted area 5107 hotel. It tells me what the altitude restrictions are and the boundary as well, and who the controlling agency is. You can also use the pan function to find information on VORs, NDBs, typically whatever is displayed on the nav map you can find information on. Notice whenever the pan function is enabled, the traffic is removed. It's enunciated with a yellow traffic removed enunciation right here in the lower left corner. If you recall in the menu setting, you can set the timer to pan out in increments of 30 seconds all the way up to 5 minutes. The MFDs also have a dedicated terrain map. So if you're flying in low visibility in the mountainous areas, you may want to have this view up. You have two different selections on views. You have the 360 view, which has the aircraft in the center, or the arc view, which has the aircraft at the bottom of the display. The bottom hotkey activates the terrain legend, and you can see the color code of the various altitudes and color combinations of where you are above or below the terrain. Note that the terrain map has the same data bar as the nav map does. It also provides the above ground level, so in case of emergency, you know how far you can glide, your gliding distance. It also has a range button where you can range in and out to whatever your flight needs are. The next view is the traffic view. The traffic view has three hotkey selections. You can either be in 360 or arc mode. You can have traffic normal, unrestricted, above, below, or normal. Note in the dedicated traffic page, you cannot turn traffic off like you can on the nav map. You also have Flight ID, which is activated now, where you can see the N number of the ADS-B out equipped aircraft, but you can also turn that off if it becomes a nuisance. On the traffic page, you can range out to 40 nautical miles or range back in to 2 nautical miles. The next view is a charts view. Here you have available to you all your instrument approach procedures, your standard instrument arrivals, and your standard instrument departures. Notice right now we have the Levon 3 arrival at Double Eagle. We press a list. We scroll through and select, for instance, the RNAV GPS 22, pressing the right knob to select it. And now it loads up the instrument approach procedure. The charts are all geo-referenced, so when you're actually flying, the aircraft position will show up along the instrument approach procedure. You can also zoom in or zoom out to read important information. You can also use the pan function to scroll left and right or up or down to read the information required to brief prior to executing the instrument approach. The next hotkey, you can select day or night view. So in the day, you have the black on white charts, but if you press night, you have the white on black to make it easier for night viewing. You can also turn the on-chip on or off with the next hotkey. The last hotkey is a timer function. So if you're shooting a non-precision approach, such as a VOR or a localizer that requires timing from the final approach fix to the missed approach point, once you hit the final approach fix, you can just press the timer button and it counts down automatically for you. If you're going to an airport that's not in your GPS for departure or destination, you can also select that airport by using the left knob. Notice the push to edit. If I push the left knob, the first letter in the airport identifier is highlighted. I push it again, and the next letter is highlighted. So I can select that by turning the left knob. Press it again, there's the next letter. And then it automatically selects the next letter for you if it's something close. Otherwise, you can just push the button and select it as appropriate. So now we have Dallas Executive selected, and I can do the same thing with the right knob and scroll down. I can look at the airport diagram. I can look at the minimums required for that airport, and I can also zoom in to make that text a lot more readable. Push to pan and scroll around, up or down. I can look at the arrival procedures, like I flew the Greg 6. Can zoom in and get all the pertinent information. Note that standard instrument arrivals and standard instrument departures are not geo-referenced. Only the instrument approach plates are geo-referenced. If Dallas Executive also had a standard instrument departure, that would be listed down in this section as well. The standard instrument departures are located on the bottom, and you can scroll down and pick out the appropriate departure procedure. The next view is the weather view. Here you can display weather products from either XM or ADS-B. In this example, we have ADS-B weather products selected. The first view of the ADS-B weather products is a convective page. Here you have both the next rad picture and the segments in the area. You can use the rain feature to zoom in or out to get a better weather picture. You can also use the push to pan on the left knob to scroll left or right, up or down. You can also press the info button, and now you can pull up specific information on the segment that you're looking at. So press the left knob for push for details. And this tells you the information on the convective segment, how long it's valid for, where it's located, and other pertinent information. Once you're done with that, you can press the left knob to close for details, and press the right knob to push for back. To get to the next weather product page, you press this knob under Select Weather, and then you twist the right knob, and now you're in the METARs page. Here you would have all the color-coded METAR flags available from ADS-B or XM. You can press the text for your departure airport, your destination airport, the nearest airport, and pull up that information as well. The last button on the bottom is the legend. By pressing that, you can see the color-coded METAR flags. You can also zoom in and zoom out on the METAR flags just like you can the convective SIGMET page. The next ADS-B weather product is the AirMet SIGMET page. Here you can see all the AirMets and SIGMETs that are being reported by your ADS-B or XM receiver. Note that if it becomes cluttered, you can turn off certain AirMets and SIGMETs such as icing, turbulence, IMC, or convective. You can also select information on the AirMets and SIGMETs by pressing the info button, then using the left knob to turn to the AirMet or SIGMET that you want information on. And then press the left knob to get the details. Once you've read the details, you can close the details. You also have a legend that shows you all the various color codes and what type of AirMet or SIGMET you're looking at based on the color code. The next weather page has TFRs or temporary flight restrictions. Note that while XM will show TFRs for the entire country, ADS-B only shows TFRs that are within 200 nautical miles of the reporting ADS-B station. The last page of ADS-B weather products are winds and temperatures aloft. Note that you can use the flight level plus or minus button to select all the way down from 3,000 feet all the way to flight level 390 to look at the winds and temperatures aloft. The last button is the legend button, so you can see what the various wind speeds are based on the type of a barb attached to the arrow. You see the half barb is 5 knots. 10 knot increments are a full barb and they can be up to 4 barbs. And then if it's above 40 knots, you'll have the wedge. If the wind speeds are above 50 knots, you'll have the wedge-shaped barb on the arrow. To turn off the legend, just press the legend button. There'll always be new ADS-B products coming out. If you have XM weather, you will also have items such as Echo and Cloud Tops available on the Aspen display. The next view on the multifunction display is synthetic vision. Here, just like on the PFD, you have the synthetic vision depiction based on your GPS location. The first hotkey is the distance marker that I can use to determine the distance of terrain ahead of me on my route of flight. The next hotkey is field of view. You can see that we're in the wide field of view because we're currently in field of view 2 as depicted here on the hotkey, also by the wide angle wedge here at the bottom of the display. If you press this hotkey, you can go into field of view 1, which is the narrow field of view as depicted by the narrow wedge here at the bottom right hand corner of your screen. On the synthetic vision view, you can also display traffic. You can have traffic in normal, unrestricted, above, below, or turn it off. I typically keep it in normal, and any traffic that's shown up in front of the aircraft will show up either above or below the horizon. The last hotkey is your traffic selection. You can select traffic the normal view, unrestricted, above, below. You can turn traffic completely off or go back to normal. Note that when traffic is selected, as long as the Aspen display is receiving traffic information from the integrated traffic system, you'll get a green traffic bubble over here in the lower left-hand corner. If there is a delay or interruption in the traffic signal received, this traffic bubble will be in amber instead of green. The next view is a timer page. On the timer page, you have 3 pilot selectable count up or count down timers. You have a flight timer and a departure time. You can select the various timers by using the first hotkey. Right now 1 of 4 is on timer 1, 2 of 4 is timer 2, 3 of 4 is timer 3, and 4 of 4 is the flight timer. To start a count up timer, merely press the start button and the selected timer will start counting. To stop it, you can press the stop button, or you can reset completely by pressing the reset button and start over again. To set a countdown timer, select the timer you want to use, then press the up hotkey. Note now that it says down and you've got a preset time below that you can edit. Press the preset hotkey and use the left knob to change the time or advance into the next segment. Once the preset value is set, you can press a start to start the countdown function. Even if I'm turned away from the page, when that timer counts down to 30 minutes, I'm going to get a timer annunciation across the top of the display to let me know one of my timers have expired. I'll also hear audio timeout call in my headset to let me know to select my timer page. The flight timer is used to aid the pilot in logging the appropriate flight time. On takeoff roll, as you accelerate above 30 knots, the flight timer starts. When you come into land, as you slow down below 30 knots on landing roll, the flight timer stops, and you can use that flight time for your logbook. The departure time is always in Zulu, and the departure time locks in once you're on the takeoff roll above 30 knots. One of the optional features on the multifunction display is angle of attack. Angle of attack provides the pilot with a visual representation of the stall margin in the current configuration of the aircraft. There are several different views on the MFD that you can have angle of attack. The first one is split screen, which you're showing right now, which can be top or bottom, or you can have it in one of the thumbnail views, and even down here on the larger display. Note the angle of attack has 4 color-coded sections. The first section is blue, which means you have plenty of stall margin. The green, which is the optimal stall margin. The green-yellow transition represents 30% above stall margin. As you're into the yellow, you're going from less than 30% to roughly 10%. And in the yellow-black transition area, that's where the aircraft is typically going to stall. Note that there are 2 wedge-shaped indications on the AOA indicator. The upper wedge is for the clean configuration with the gear and flaps up. The lower wedge is for the landing configuration with the gear and flaps down. Ideally, in the landing configuration, as you're coming into land, the lower wedge is right at the green to yellow transition. Angle attack is very useful in preventing loss of control in flight, especially during the landing and takeoff phases. 2 additional features that the MFD 1000 has that the MFD 500 does not is a secondary attitude and secondary HSI. The secondary attitude indicator of the MFD 1000 is only available in the thumbnail view of the MFD 1000. You select that by having the appropriate thumbnail window selected and scrolling over till you find the attitude indicator. Since the MFD 1000 has its own separate AHRS, this is an excellent backup to your primary flight display for attitude, airspeed, and altitude. The MFD 1000 also has a secondary HSI feature that you can use to back up the primary flight display or use during complex instrument approaches that you need to identify your location with crossing radials from a VOR or GPS radial. Each of the views of the MFD also have a data bar. In the full screen, it's across the top. In the split screen, it's in the middle. And in the thumbnail, it's also in the middle, separating between the 2 thumbnail views and the larger view. In the data bar, you'll have what GPS source is selected at the time, your current track, the current fixture going towards, in this case it's Double Eagle, Kilo Alpha Echo Golf, the ETE to the current fix, the current altimeter setting. And if there was a fix after Double Eagle, you'd have that identified here as well. Prior to takeoff, you want to check the display's internal battery power. To do so, press the menu button and use the right knob to scroll over to power settings, then press the battery hotkey. After pressing the battery hotkey, in approximately 15 seconds, you'll get the current percentage of battery power left. Note you have the red annunciation up here in the top left corner. It's counting down, and now it tells you this battery has 99% of its life left. You must ensure that the battery has at least 80% of its battery life available prior to takeoff. Prior to takeoff, set the local altimeter setting by pressing the bar hotkey, then twisting the right knob to the appropriate setting. Make sure prior to takeoff that your HSI is set to the appropriate navigation aid by using the center button. Then you can set your desired heading for takeoff by twisting the right knob to either the runway heading or whatever heading you're assigned after takeoff. If you're lined up on the runway, you can also use a sync key to sync to the current runway heading. To set the desired altitude of your initial climb, press the right knob until you see altitude above the right knob and also highlighted in magenta. Use the right knob to twist your desired altitude. To set your airspeed bug, press the left knob twice, then use the left knob to scroll up or down to set the desired airspeed setting. After you have your PFD set for takeoff, set your MFD as desired in either full screen, split screen, or thumbnail view with the appropriate features set depending on the flight conditions. While in flight, you can use the hotkeys to set the desired display configuration. You can switch from 360 to arc view. You can also turn on the next ride picture, turn off the next ride picture. You can select different traffic views. Or if you have synthetic vision enabled, you can also cycle through the various synthetic vision pages to select what's most appropriate for your phase of flight. While in flight, you can change the MFD configuration by using a combination of the left and right knobs to change the views from full screen, split screen, or thumbnail, or change the different views within each window. If you have an older autopilot that does not have GPS steering, the Aspen primary flight display will provide GPS steering when you place the autopilot in heading mode and have an active flight plan in your GPS system. The heading bug is a useful feature when both hand flying and using the autopilot. Using the right knob, you can scroll the heading bug to the appropriate heading you desire to fly. If you're hand flying, you can use the bug to reference that heading. When the autopilot is armed, the autopilot will automatically capture whatever heading you have set. When you're flying to or from a VOR station, you can use the left knob to set the desired course that you want to fly. The Aspen PFD has 2 bearing pointers available to the pilot. You have a single bearing pointer and a dual bearing pointer. You can select those by pressing the appropriate button. If your autopilot has flight director capability, the Aspen PFD will display flight director when integrated with the appropriate autopilot. For autopilots that have flight director capability, the PFD will display the command bars as appropriate. You can use the cockpit timers as a reminder for a variety of cockpit duties, such as changing fuel tanks or checking your O2 levels. So next we'll go through some in-flight configurations of both the PFD and the MFD. Starting off with the PFD, I want to go to page 2 of 3 on my PFD. If I have Storm Scope installed in the aircraft, I can have strikes or cells by pressing the buttons here. I do have ADS-B, but if you also have XM weather, you can press the next ride picture, and you'll get the next ride picture for the local area all the way up to 200 miles on a PFD. I always like to have traffic up, and I've got 4 selections of traffic. I can have traffic normal, which is roughly 3,000 feet above and below the aircraft. Unrestricted, which is roughly 9,900 feet above and below the aircraft. I can do above, which is 9,900 feet above, roughly 3,000 feet below. Or if I'm descending, I'll do below, so I have 10,000 feet below roughly and 3,000 feet above. But typically when I'm cruising, I just like to have it normal, so I have a nice puck of roughly 3,000 feet above or below me with the traffic. I can also zoom in and zoom out by pressing the range button. So right now I'm at 5 nautical miles. I can range out 10, 15, all the way up to 200 nautical miles. And you can see up to 200 nautical miles, it's a lot of information. So typically I just like to keep my PFD right around 5 nautical miles. The last page, once again, is synthetic vision. If you want to fly with synthetic vision on your PFD, you can choose the full screen, the split screen, with synthetic vision on top and the HSI on the bottom blacked out, or the nav map like I talked about earlier. Typically, I like to fly it. If I'm using synthetic vision on my PFD, I'll have a nice synthetic vision picture on top, and I'll have my HSI with my traffic and weather on below. Next, on to the multifunction displays. If you recall from takeoff, I like to have my MFD 1000 set up in the thumbnail view, but once I'm away from the deck and at altitude, angle of attack is no longer doing me any good, so I'll go to page 2 of 2 on my MFD, and I'll have synthetic vision on top and traffic down below. There are all sorts of different things you can put in each configuration, but this is how I like to fly it. I have my MFD 1000, synthetic vision, and traffic on the bottom, and my MFD 500 over here on the left. I typically have in a nav map, and I'll have different things selected, whether I'm flying in terrain or traffic or weather. I have those hotkeys selected as appropriate. So once airborne, I'm either using GPS steering or heading function. I have built-in GPS steering in my autopilot, so I won't be able to show you that on my plane. But I do have the heading bug, so typically if I'm using heading function, I'm just twisting the right knob to whatever heading I want to fly or whatever I'm directed to by ATC. If I'm flying a VOR airway, I have to set a new course every time I hit a VOR fix. So basically I'll just press the left knob, and course will be turned magenta, and I have magenta, and I'll turn to whatever course I want to fly from to or from the VOR. When coming in for an approach to landing, you want to ensure you have the PFD set up appropriately. First thing you want to do is set your altimeter setting to the current local altimeter. Then you want to ensure the HSI is selected to the appropriate navigation source for the approach you're flying. Then you want to set your minimums bug as appropriate for the approach. So next, change your PFD to the desired configuration. In a multi-tube configuration, I prefer to use the non-synthetic vision view since I typically have synthetic vision on another display. But in a single display configuration, I would use one of the many synthetic vision views available to me. When your autopilot is in approach mode, it ignores the GPS steering commands from the Aspen PFD. When flying an instrument approach, use the heading bug to set the assigned heading from ATC. When flying an instrument approach, use the left knob to set the course as depicted on your instrument approach plate. Once you know your expected approach, you can select and review it on the multifunction display. Before turning off aircraft electrical power, turn off each Aspen display by their dedicated power switch. I appreciate you taking the time and joining me on this course about the Evolution Pro Max system. We've gone over the basic functions and features. Prior to flying in actual IFR conditions, we highly recommend you seek out training with a certified flight instructor familiar with the avionics equipment in your aircraft. Please feel free to contact your local Aspen Avionics representative with any further questions. Thank you for your time.